thing we have to fear is
in war,
fear itself.
there is no substitute for victory.
Let us never negotiate out of fear.
We stand undivided, forever united, fighting hand in hand for the liberty we've earned, for glory and honor, for our sons and daughters, ever mindful of the lessons we've learned. Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and politics. This is WallBuilders Live, and we appreciate you joining us today. You can visit online at wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com. I'm Rick Green here with David Barton. David, of course, if you're going to measure this intersection of faith and politics, if you're going to impact what's going on in the culture, you got to know what folks are thinking. And one of our favorite speakers for Pro-Family Legislators Conference that really has done a phenomenal job of really getting inside the minds of American people is George Barna.
Yeah, George is really good at the metrics, and metrics are really important. You know, the scripture says you judge a tree by its fruits. We're also told in 1 Corinthians 11 that if we would judge ourselves, we wouldn't have to be judged. In other words, the more metrics we use to measure ourselves and judge our own fruit, the less we have to answer for at the final judgment. So all this stuff about measurements is really, really important, and it also helps us know exactly what we're thinking, and what we're thinking tells us where we're headed. Because your thinking always precedes your actions. So what George does is a really great job of helping us evaluate where we are right now and where we're going to be 20 years from now as a result of what we're thinking right now.
Well, this is actually also a partnership of yours now. You guys have come together on a new book called U-Turn. And the whole idea is getting back, doing a U-turn, getting away from the bad path we're headed down, back to the American values that made us great. So what brought that on?
Well, you know, I think intuitively a lot of people know America's not headed in a good direction. And it doesn't matter whether you, and what we did was we looked at the three major institutions, that of government, that of family, and that of church. And when you look at all the institutions that are out there, the military and the judiciary and education, et cetera, you find that in no institution do Americans have confidence today. Nothing is above 50% confidence, not even the military. And everybody's pro-military, but they just don't have confidence in the institution. So we're losing our confidence. We recognize we're off track. 3 out of 4 Americans say that we're off track. The question is, how do you get back on track? And where did we get off track? You know, getting back on track, it really helps know where you got off track because throughout our life is a series of decisions, which means we come to intersections. We choose this path or that path. And once you choose the wrong path, you get off track. And if you want to get back on track, you don't just hike off cross country and hope you intersect the right path. You got to turn around and go back to where you made the wrong decision and then make a different decision. Change that decision, make the right decision, go in the right direction. And so recognizing that Americans know that we're not headed in the right direction, the question then became, all right, where do you get the right direction and what do you have to do to go back to it, and what U-turns will we have to make to get this thing back on track?
The book is called U-Turn, Restoring America to the Strength of Its Roots, by David Barton and George Barna. And George Barna is going to be with us when we come back from the break. Stay with us here on WallBuilders Live.
This is David Barton with another moment from America's history. Joseph Story is one of the most important names in American jurisprudence. Not only was he placed on the U.S. Supreme Court by President James Madison, but he also founded Harvard Law School and authored numerous legal works on the Constitution. While today's revisionists claim that the goal of the First Amendment was absolute religious pluralism, Justice Joseph Story vehemently disagreed. He declared, "The real object of the First Amendment was not to encourage, much less to advance, Mohammedanism or Judaism or infidelity by prostrating Christianity, but was to exclude all rivalry among Christian denominations." According to founder Joseph Story, Christianity, not pluralism, was the goal of the Founding Fathers in the First Amendment, for only a Christian nation is tolerant and thus is truly pluralistic.
For more information on God's hand in American history, contact WallBuilders at 1-800-8-REBUILD.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. Our guest today is George Barna, author of over 50 books. Great research. We've had him on the program several times, and also a very popular speaker at our legislators conference. And he and David Barton have a new book just came out called U-Turn: Restoring America to the Strength of Its Roots. George Barna, thanks for coming on, bro.
Great to be with you again.
Hey, you and David have, of course, y'all have worked together, talked together. We've had you on the program for years. What caused you guys to decide to do a book together?
I think David was desperate. He asked me if I'd be, willing to work with him on a book, and I jumped at the chance. I've been looking for that opportunity for a long time because I respect him so much, and so it was a great chance for us to work together, and it was one of those wonderful synchronistic kind of experiences for me where everything, I think, fit together pretty well. I'm just excited about the book and, look forward to seeing what it can do.
I love even the concept of you guys coming together on a book like this because you're so incredible at identifying what people are thinking and where the trends are going, where the issues are. And David's so great at bringing back that founding formula and the things that made America great. So for y'all to team up and say, okay, hey, here's the problem, here's where we've got issues, and here's the solution. Here's how we turn this thing around and get back to the greatness of America is just is so needed right now in our culture. And I'm thrilled you guys are doing it. So sum up for me, just if you can, in a few minutes, what have you identified as the situation in America based on your data? Where do we stand in terms of our values and where America stands right now?
In some ways the concept is very simple, which I would describe as being that historically America became a great and very unique nation because of the nature of the partnership between three key entities, between the family, the church, and the government. And when you go back in American history, as David so terrifically does in the book, and show how that partnership worked, what you find is that, they trusted each other, they worked together, each had its own role and was fulfilling that role admirably. And so you had families who recognized that they're really the building block of the culture. And they have to raise children to be great citizens, to understand what it means to be a citizen of a republic, to understand what is truth, where do you find truth, how do you apply truth within the broader context of the nation. The church has to be there to keep instructing people about what the Bible teaches about these things, because the Bible is where ultimate truth is found, and it speaks to all of these issues. So families need to be in tune and in touch with the church and the teaching that it's giving and the encouragement and the direction that's being provided so that parents then can provide that to their children, both through their teaching and their modeling of it. And then the government needs to work with both of those because the government is only there to serve them. And so when you look historically at what happened, what you find is that, yes, as you study our core documents, whether it's the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, it's all based on scriptural principles. And I know there are a lot of people get offended by that, but get over it. I mean, just, read the documents.
Facts are facts, right?
I mean, what are you going to do? This is how it was. You may not like it, but that's what it was, and that's exactly why it worked. And so you've got these three critical entities working together to build this amazing country. But then you jump ahead 200-plus years, and what you find is that increasingly that partnership has been breaking apart, that each wants to control its own little dimension, and they're no longer working in unison. They no longer have a single unified vision. And so you've got the government, which wants to be supreme in everybody's life. You've got the church, which doesn't want to dirty its hands with politics. It just wants to talk about theological matters, but in a more and more abstract form. And then you've got families who believe they're entitled to all the best stuff that's out there in the world. And so they're not worried about how do I raise a great citizen. They're more worried about how do I raise a child who's going to be happy and fulfilled and have a wonderful self-image and all of these things that lead to further pursuit of entitlement. The whole system falls apart. The American dream, which is what made America great, is no longer the same American dream that we used to have. The American dream used to be that you'd want to be able to work hard and to produce good stuff, but you could have, the simple but enjoyable things of life, a house, a car, an education, good marriage, children, being a community of like-minded people, all these things. But now that's not what people dream about. as we've interviewed people around the country over the past few years, trying to understand, what's your vision of the future? What are you going to work hard for? What we find is they only want to work as hard as necessary to get by. That they demand freedom without being willing to really work at it. They want, their rights. They want services because they feel they're entitled to it. They want a customized family experience without anybody putting any kind of rules or regulations or traditions on them. They've got their own personalized moral code. They've got a whole different set of virtues that they believe in. So things have radically changed because we've gotten away from what made us great. And I know it's David and my heartbeat that this book will help people to remember what the roots of this nation are. It's not that we want to go backwards. We want to go forwards, but we want to go forwards intelligently, and we want to do it for the right reasons and in the right way.
Powerful, powerful, man. If I could be very simple here, it sounds like really we've become spoiled, and then our government and our church is encouraging us to be spoiled. Government's saying, you deserve all this, I'm going to give it to you, and the church is saying it's all about your happiness and how you feel, and we have pastors standing up saying you worship for how it makes you feel, and I mean, is that what's happened? We've just become spoiled. We don't realize that those things we used to want in terms of an opportunity to work hard and earn those things, that's what really brings the happiness.
I think that's exactly right. A different way of saying it is that we were too blessed by God. And so we had this incredible situation where God continued to bless us, and eventually we looked at it and we said, we're pretty cool, aren't we? Look at what we've done. And it's a story that you see in Scripture time and time again, where God blesses them, gives them a king. The king, says, I've done a great job. And, before you know it, it's fallen apart because they've turned their back on God, and it's all about themselves. And we're exactly in that place now.
And he warned us about that, right? I mean, that's what Deuteronomy talks about, that not getting to the point where you enjoy these blessings so much that you think that you created them and you brought them upon yourself.
Yeah, and there's the Genesis 12 principle, too, of I have blessed you so that you can be a blessing to other people, not simply so that you can squander it upon yourself, so that you can heap more and more stuff in your backyard, in your garage, and, wherever. No. The idea is that we are God's servants. I mean, we're here to bless and love and help and serve other people. But we lost that mindset. Now we believe that other people are here to bless and love and serve us.
What is the U-turn then? I mean, how do we turn that around, both, our families and our mindset to not be selfish, but to look for these things, our government and our churches?
There's got to be a philosophical shift. Our leaders have to actually stand up and lead, which would be a huge blessing in and of itself, particularly within the church. If we look at the church, what we know is that we've gotten away from biblical morality. We've gotten away from the idea of being the church. Now what we do is we go to church, but we don't think of ourselves as being God's representative at all times wherever we are. So there's a mindset shift that has to take place. This notion of, what is success in life? It's not about acquiring the most toys. It's not about having the biggest reputation or bank account. It's about allowing God to break us of sin, self, and society. And so accepting and adopting this notion of, I want to be a broken person. A broken person isn't a loser. A broken person is the only one who wins in the end. And so changing that mindset of, what does a meaningful, purposeful, godly life look like? Even changing philosophically to think about, is a godly life something that we want to live? For most Americans right now, it's not. They believe that God exists. They believe that Jesus was a historical person. They believe that he died on the cross. Great. But for them, it's not something that they're taking to heart and saying, but why? Why did he create me? Why did he die on the cross? What is my life supposed to be about? And so we've got to help people rediscover roots. What kind of roots? Going back to the Scriptures, understanding the kind of life that God has asked us to live. Looking back at the core documents of our nation, at the Constitution, the Declaration, the Bill of Rights, and understanding when the founders put this together, they spent a lot of time in prayer. They spent a lot of time in Scripture trying to figure out how can we really serve God, given this blank slate of a country What could we do to make it work? And so there's their insights about what the scriptures say about how a nation can work in such a way that it becomes a game changer. It becomes a unique entity throughout the world, as we have been for so many years. But we've lost that now. We can regain it. But we've got to go back to understanding, what are the philosophical and theological underpinnings of what will facilitate that kind of turnaround.
Yeah, powerful. You started that by saying that leaders need to lead, not just finger to the wind, not following the crowd, jumping out in front of the parade and pretending that you're leading it. Which leaders? Is this leaders in the church and in the political realm? Who are the people that really need to stand up right now with this return to the selflessness that made the nation great?
Well, when we talk about what made the nation great, we go back to that partnership of the three entities. So we've got family. Parents need to stand up. They need to be strong parents raising children according to the scriptures. That's an act of leadership. That's not an easy thing, but you've got to have what every great leader has, which is a vision of the future that you're trying to create. Having a vision, in their case, of the children that they want to raise, what they're going to believe, what they're going to do, what they're going to pursue with their time and their energy and their skills and their gifts. You've got to have all that in mind and be raising them up in such a way that they'll be able to fulfill that calling. If we look at the church itself, the organized body of believers, we've got people in positions of leadership who, by and large, are not leaders. They're teachers, and that's fine. We need good Bible teaching, no doubt about it. But leaders and teachers are two different roles, two different types of people, two different mentalities, two different types of heart, two different sets of perceptions about what's important. And so, a teacher wants an audience. A leader wants a group of people who will follow him or her forward to change the world for the best. And so we've got to have those kinds of people of strength and courage and vision who know that, yes, they're going to constantly be in conflict as they try to change these things. They're not going to be popular all the time. They may not be popular with most people, but that doesn't matter because a leader doesn't choose to be a leader. A leader is called to move forward according to the vision that God gives them, and therefore they have no choice but to invest their entire life in pursuing that vision. We have that kind of leadership, things would change dramatically. And then, of course, government. Well, we choose our leaders. Shouldn't we be choosing them from the cadre of godly people who have biblical morality, who have a sense of what the scriptures teach about truth and about the future and about what honors God and how we can best serve other people, rather than worrying about how can I get the most votes, how can I get the most pork for my district, how can I be reelected? That stuff doesn't matter. What matters is being an agent of truth, being a soldier of the kingdom and taking that mentality into the political arena to love people, to serve people, to do what is honorable according to the scriptures.
Oh, man, George, I wish we had another hour. I'm telling you, that is it's so powerful. But are people in the data that you've gathered from surveying people, are they hungry for that kind of leadership? And do they want leaders that are willing to say, hey, this is the right way to go, let the chips fall where they may, or do they want the tickling of the ears?
There's two different things that are going on. People are in a sense of inner conflict about this. On the one hand, they want leaders who know what they believe in, who know what they stand for, who are really going to fight for it and be articulate about it and not be dissuaded from the very vision that they cast. On the other hand, people are saying, but you know what? I want to be comfortable. I want to be secure. I don't want to rock the boat. I do want people to take care of me. So there's this inner conflict, this war that's raging in the minds and hearts of most Americans, where deep down they know that we're in trouble. They know that where we're at can't work. And then I'll layer one other thing on top of that, which is sadly, as I've done this research for more than 30 years now, one of the things that I've discovered is that people generally don't change significantly unless they're in a lot of pain. And so then the question comes up, okay, are people in sufficiently suffering that they're thinking, you know what, something radical's got to change here. We've really got to go a different direction. I've got to take these other opportunities more seriously than I have. I've got to look for different kind of leadership. I've got to think about a different kind of future and what my contribution to it is going to be.
And the leaders themselves have got to stand up and lead and persuade those who have this inner conflict, right? I mean, that's the role of a leader, is to help address these things and move people to action in this direction.
If you don't do that, you're not a leader by definition. I mean, you're a caretaker, you're something, but you're not a leader.
Yeah.
And we desperately need great leaders at this point in time. They've got to come out of the church. And, you know, we see that most pastors are not willing to engage in political activity. Well, historically, you know, as David could tell you, I mean, that's where we got our political leaders. These people knew the scriptures, they knew the needs of the people, they were articulate, they were strong, they were visionary, they led, they were willing to get in the political arena because they just saw it as an extension of what the church at large is called to do. So, yeah, we need pastors in there, we need lay people in there who love God and want to use politics as a way to serve Him and people.
Powerful stuff. It's called U-Turn, Restoring America to the Strength of Its Roots, in bookstores everywhere now. You can get it at wallbuilders.com or get more information there. George Barna, God bless you, brother. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Stay with us, folks. Back in a moment with David Barton. Have you ever wanted to learn more about the United States Constitution but just felt like, man, the classes are boring, or it's just that old language from 200 years ago, or I don't know where to start? People want to know, but it gets frustrating because you don't know where to look for truth about the Constitution either. Well, we've got a special program for you available now called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green, and it's actually a teaching done on the Constitution at Independence Hall, in the very room where the Constitution was framed. We take you both to Philadelphia, the cradle of liberty, and Independence Hall, and to the WallBuilders Library, where David Barton brings the history to life to teach the original intent of our founding fathers. We call it the Quick Start Guide to the Constitution because in just a few hours through these videos, you will learn the Citizen's Guide to America's Constitution. You'll learn what you need to do to help save our constitutional republic. It's fun, it's entertaining, and it's going to inspire you to do your part to preserve freedom for future generations. It's called Constitution Alive with David Barton and Rick Green. You can find out more information on our website now at wallbuilders.com.
Let the torch of freedom burn.
We're back. Thanks for staying with us here on WallBuilders Live. Special thanks to George Barna. And by the way, the book, U-Turn, you can get more information about it at wallbuilders.com or bookstores everywhere. David, I know you respect George a lot. You've said that over the years. So this had to be fun for you to do a project with him.
It was a lot of fun, and it was fun as we did chapters back and forth each other. We'd each add more thoughts, and it was kind of like the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron. You know, you get those two edges rubbing on each other, and you come up with some really sharp stuff. And I think the book reflects that. But I was listening to George describe it. You know, he and I wrote it together, but I still love listening to him talk about it because he keeps bringing out new stuff. And he was talking about how the American dream has changed. And, of course, that's documented in the book. But the way he characterized it, you know, we no longer are into hard work. We want freedom and rights without responsibility. We're just entitled to it, so no responsibility. Everybody's got their own individual moral code now. In the book, we showed that only 34% of Americans believe that there is absolute truth, that there are fixed moral standards. So we're moving in that direction. And then he made the comment, he said that America was too blessed by God. And when he said that, I was instantly reminded of Deuteronomy 8, where that you have Moses, the old man, talking to the folks that are going into the promised land. You know, he's one of those old guys that don't get to go in. God said, except for Joshua and Caleb, only the young ones get to go in. And so they're on the plains before Moses goes off to die. He's telling them, guys, here's what's going to happen. Here's human experience. Here's what we've already learned. Here's what we've seen in our own history. But I want to just read this little passage because it's perfect for America. This is out of Deuteronomy 8, and Moses tells them, observe the commands of the Lord your God, walking in obedience to him and revering him. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land. Yeah, ask the pilgrims, ask the Puritans, ask those who came to America. It's a good land with brooks, streams, and deep springs gushing out into valleys and hills, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil and honey, a land where you'll not be scarce and you will lack nothing, a land where the rocks are iron and you can dig copper out of the hills. When you've eaten and are satisfied, praise the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commands, his laws, and his decrees I'm giving you today. Otherwise, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, and when your herds and flocks grow large and your silver and gold increase and all you have is multiplied, then your heart will become proud and you will forget the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You'll say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands has produced this wealth for me. If you ever forget the Lord your God and follow other gods and worship and bow down to them, I testify against you today that you will surely be destroyed. Like the nations the Lord destroyed before you, so you'll be destroyed. I mean, he's right. Your blessings can become a curse to you. And that's really where America is right now. We're so blessed that we think we've done all this. We think it'll survive forever. We think it'll last regardless of what we do. And that's just not the case. And so I love the way he concluded. He said, our leaders have got to stand up and lead. We need that at the church. We need that in home. And we need that in government.
And with that wake-up call, we can make that U-turn. We can turn from that direction that Deuteronomy was talking about there.
Yeah, we can turn from that direction, and we've got to, and we will, and that's the U-turn we have to make, and the book shows you specific attitudes and actions that you can adopt to make those changes.
Check it out at wallbuilders.com or bookstores everywhere. Again, it's called U-Turn, Restoring America to the Strength of Its Roots. Thanks for listening today to WallBuilders Live.